Hello. Today we're going to cover how to use trucking fatigue meter to monitor the drivers within your fleet. You don't have to be in the system at all times in order to keep an eye on how the fatigue is progressing with each of your drivers. One thing that can be done is to subscribe to the group of drivers that you oversee, and when their fatigue threshold goes above the level that you've set, an email will be sent letting you know that the driver has exceeded the threshold. What you see on the screen here is an example of that kind of email where I find out that Matt Current has now exceeded the threshold. I simply click on the link within the email, and it's going to bring me directly into Trucking Fatigue Meter, directly to the driver where the fatigue threshold has been exceeded, and I can see their day-by-day representation of their logs. At this view of the system, the royal blue represents the sleep windows that our system predicts. The light gray is the on-duty period as represented from their hours of service logs. The dark gray represents the period they were actually driving. So what you see here is we're in our fourth day of this weekly cycle. And this red line that's shown here on Wednesday, November 30th, is where the fatigue has exceeded the threshold for this particular driver. Now here's a situation where it's high and they're driving, which of course is indicative of risk. So looking at the day-to-day, we can see that this driver normally is sleeping during the nighttime and driving during the day. In this particular case, they had a little nap before work and came on to their night shift of driving, and as a result, their fatigue is high. This is giving an idea this is the first night transitioning to night driving. We can also flip to the other view, which is the fatigue trend line, to see the same amount of data in just more of a trend perspective left to right. So again, blue represents sleep. Light gray represents on duty, dark gray represents driving. And what we see here is on November 29th, they had a normal night's sleep, stayed up most of the day, had a little nap here, an hour and 53 minutes, and then they started their night shift and then began their drive. And as a result, what you see here is fatigue evolving day by day. And of course, in this case of a night shift, it goes very high and it turns red when it exceeds the fatigue threshold. So in this instance, we know that this driver is basically first night on back onto a night shift, and they are obviously battling with the biology in the circadian rhythm that wants to be sleeping at this hour of day. So armed with this information, I would now contact the driver and ask them to call me at the next opportunity. I would have a discussion to find out whether or not their sleep pattern matches what our system's estimating. If they got more sleep, then their fatigue might be a little bit less than what's shown. If they got less sleep, then the fatigue might actually be worse than what's shown. At the end of the day, we want to have the conversation to diagnose with the driver how they're feeling, where they're at, and make a good decision, having this scientific backing to support the conversation. In this particular instance, it might be an opportunity to have the driver get a power nap, certainly maybe have a cup of coffee, or just break up their drive so that they're not working through this window of circadian low, which is the real hard part of driving through the night, and not be fully cognizant of what's going on. So in this case, then, I would obviously work out a plan with the driver, coach them through it, and then that's all we have to do. Now, one thing I would do before I would leave the system is I would go back to my dashboard and take a look at my driver board. Here you can see I'm looking at the organization, but Matt happens to be in the Southeast group. So when I look at my group, this would be my list of drivers that I'm reviewing. Matt is red. And he's on duty, and looks like here Mike is also driving at the moment. So I would look at him and do the exact same thing that we just did for Matt to understand what's going on. Again, looking at day by day and then comparing that with the fatigue trends to understand what his nightly drive patterns are looking like and what his probable nap strategies may have been. Again, I would then, onto this information, have a good discussion with Mike to come up with a good solution. And that basically concludes how to use the system to monitor the fatigue levels of your drivers and initiate driver engagement to intervene where appropriate.